how do you employ people who don't look like you, act like you, think like you, and what a gift that is. The idea of it's our way or the highway does not work anymore because younger generations know how to build their own highway. To be honest, right now, my number one goal is for people to realize that their words and actions are often misaligned and they can easily be considered to be hypocrite.
Welcome to Mission Activated, where we bring you the stories of individuals who've awakened to their true purpose and are living a life of passion, impact, and alignment. I'm Evelyn Clark, your host, and I believe that when you're on mission, everything falls into place. Here, we share the journeys of those who've discovered their unique path and embraced their soul's calling. It's not just about making money in life and in business, it's about making a difference, living on purpose, and inspiring yourself and others along the way. Let's get to it. My guest today is on a mission to dismantle bias and advance racial equity in the workplace. I'd love you to meet Dr. Kimberly Harden. She is the CEO of Harden Consulting Group, an award-winning educator and a two-time Amazon bestselling author. She works in the workplace to help leaders build trust-centered, inclusive, and culturally intelligent organizations. Now, outside of her groundbreaking work, she's also a weightlifter, loves eating salad for breakfast, and she loves Tim McGraw. This conversation is about many things, including courage, culture, and creating workplaces that truly work for everyone. She's an absolute joy. Meet Dr. Kimberly Harden. Dr. Kimberly Harden, welcome to the show. It is an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. Tell me, whereabouts are you in the world?
I am in Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States.
Wow. So for our Australian listeners, where is North Carolina in relationship to, the top and the bottom of the US, east and west?
So we are in the southeast. I always get confused because it's literally 2 hours south of Virginia and 2 hours north of Florida, but we're considered the southeast.
Okay. So quite away from the coastline from
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Right in. Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm originally from Seattle, so getting to the coast was relatively easy. Not so much here in North Carolina.
Right. Well, thank you for joining me. And I know it's your evening there. And I'm just really looking forward to this conversation since we met and getting into the mission that you're activated on. So could you share with me what that mission is?
Absolutely. So my mission is to empower leaders to build we-centric workplaces. So that means building a workplace culture of trust, transparency, communication, and collaboration. And it's needed more now than ever.
Wow. That I can only imagine that takes some crafting and some discipline and consistency and patience. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But I'd love to hear now about the journey. So what's been the journey you've been on that has brought you to where you are today?
I used to tell my students that I, kind of zigzagged all over the place as far as my journey. Even when I say my students, I did not start out being a professor. I worked in healthcare for many, many years. And then I felt that there was a need and a calling for me to go into higher education. And so I was a professor for about 12 years. And the reason why I went into academic is because I wanted to teach students how to effectively communicate and work with a team. From my time working in healthcare, that's what I found that was lacking. We would have, new employees and, they would have the education, but not the experience. And not the experience of working with a particular group of people, such as Black women. And so they didn't know how to interact. They weren't very culturally intelligent at all. They had very little emotional intelligence. And so my thought pattern was, how can I teach them before they actually get into the workplace? Aha, let's go into the university system. And even that, I believe in divine callings, universe working its magic, whatever you want to call it. Because when I was working in healthcare, I got laid off, to be honest with you. I got laid off and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with myself? And literally 3 days after I got laid off, I got an email from my alma mater, University of Washington, asking me to come sit on their board for a new initiative they were launching, which was the Center for Media Literacy. Well, I was unemployed, had nothing else to do. Sure, be happy to. And so I did that. And one of the fellow board members asked me to design a course to teach to her high school students. Okay. And after I developed the curriculum, they asked me to come teach the course. So it went from can you create it to can you teach it? And so I did that 2 days a week for a quarter and just fell in love with it. And I reflected back to my own journey, as an undergrad and how I would teach a communications course differently from how most professors teach. I feel like most professors teach in the old school way of, they have an old curriculum that they haven't changed in 30 years. They're using a book from the 1970s, 1980s, and it's very stale and dated because I don't know if it's because professors don't like change or they get so comfortable because they're tenured and they don't have to change. But I always like to challenge myself. And I always told my students, if I'm not having fun, you're not going to have fun. And so I developed all of my courses that way, and I taught them that way. And we pivoted when we need to pivot. And so that's how I really got into teaching and teaching organizational development, team effectiveness. I'm sorry, team effectiveness. And most of my courses were built on team projects of how do you resolve conflict. And so I actually gave, many people, maybe yourself included, dislike team projects. You always have one or two people that just are slackers. And so the instructions I gave them was, if you have a slacker on your team, you can fire them just like they would be fired on a job. That person would have to apply to work on another team and explain why they were terminated. And then the other team had the right to accept or refuse their application to work on that team. So out of all of my years of doing that, I only had one team member get fired. They took it seriously because I explained to them, this is what you're going to do in the real world. You cannot go to a job and slack off and not fulfill your duties. And so it worked well. And from there, I decided that actually it wasn't even me, to be honest with you. Again, divine intervention. My mother, 5 days before my mother passed away, she says, I need you to start your business. My mother had no idea that I had even thought about starting a business. And so she passed away in January 2019. In April, the university says, okay, I need you to go give these presentations to some executives. That's not part of my job description. I have 2 classes that I need to teach. So literally, I taught my morning class, went and gave a presentation, went and taught my second class, went back and gave another presentation. And from there, these were like high-level executives at big Fortune 100 companies. And they reached out to me. They said, we really liked what you had to say. Would you consider being a contractor with us? And that's kind of how I started my business. And then I did all the formalities of actually getting the business license.
And how long have you been in the business for?
6 years.
Right.
It'll
Well,
be
yeah,
7 years in May.
7 years in May. Wow. It sounds like there was some moments along that journey that were many moments completely out of your hands. It wasn't like you had chosen them, but you allowed life to unfold and the divine intervention to, put an opportunity in front of you and you took it. Did you notice at each moment that that was the case? It was like, oh, I'm being guided, or, life is taking me on this journey.
I feel like my entire life has been like that. I remember when I was about, growing up, my dad used to call me little professor. He's like, you think you know everything. You try to teach everybody everything. So he just always called me little professor. And when I was about 13 or 14 years old, I had the privilege of meeting our fire captain, the fire chief of Seattle, Mr. Claude Harris. And there were about 12 of us, young high school students. And he went around to everyone and asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? He went to everyone except me. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm not invisible. What's going on? And he was like, I already know you're going to be a doctor. Mr. Harris, respectfully, I don't want to work with blood and guts. Like, that is not my purview. Not knowing that having a PhD is a doctorate. And so, and ironically, I ended up working in healthcare administration for years. But when he told me that, it caught me off guard. I was like, I don't want to work with blood and guts. And that's kind of how I got into teaching in the first place, because I was working in healthcare administration and teaching physicians how to be culturally sensitive to patients of color. So how do you speak to them in a way that they can understand instead of using, this high level medical terminology that a lot of people don't understand? And so I would coach them. Okay, your demographic is from this part of the country. They have this vernacular. These are the words that they use to express this type of disease. So, for example, diabetes. Well, a lot of people from certain parts of the South, they don't call it diabetes. They call it sugar, or they call it sugar diabetes. And so when you frame it that way, when you say, oh, you have sugar, they understand that, versus you have, level 1 or type 1 diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. So I coach them on how to use language that their patients could relate to. And that's how I got started.
And were you following the need, or was it kind of more of a spark inside of you that went, I enjoy this, I'm good at it, I can see I'm helping?
It was both. It was both. Having my family come from, the southern parts of the United States, having family members that were sickly with different illnesses, there was definitely a need. But I also liked teaching. I loved reading about things and learning how to, to me, it was kind of like playing the game Jenga, the different building blocks and the puzzles, and how am I going to make this fit in a way that it's not going to tumble over. And so that's how I always operated.
Mm, mm. And so when you went and studied and did your undergrad, how did you choose what you wanted to do? Was that teaching that you studied? Was
No, my undergrad was actually in communication. Okay, let me back up just to show you how ordained everything was. So I entered. I was a college dropout, and I called my dad and I said, "Dad, I need to drop out." And he was like, "Okay." Did not ask me any questions. I came home, got an apartment, moved literally 5 minutes away from my parents so I could still have access to food, and got a job. And the job that I was in was actually an international healthcare organization. The manager that I had, who is still my mentor almost 30 years later, uh, she called me into her office and she says, "Kimberly, what is it that you want to do?" Well, I was a college dropout. I had no idea. All I know is I wanted to make enough money to pay my rent and I wouldn't have to rely on my parents. And she says, "Okay, I need you to think about it." Okay. So I observed her for about a month and just saw what she was doing and how she was doing it and how she was able to connect with people. Again, it was an international healthcare organization. So we had offices all over the globe, and she interacted seamlessly with everyone that she came in contact with. And I said, "I want to learn how to do what you do." She was a qualitative researcher. She had a master's of public health. And so she's like, "Okay, this is what you want to do." She came out with binders, humongous 5-inch binders. And she's like, okay, you have to learn this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, well, I wasn't planning on going back to school, Barbara. But she taught me how to conduct in-depth interviews for healthcare and what questions to ask and how to conduct focus groups and ask open-ended questions and all of those things that really paid off well. And so I ended up going back to get my undergraduate degree, not at her insistence, but at her encouragement. And so I worked during the day and enrolled in the evening degree program. And since I had already told my parents that I had dropped out and they never asked me about it, I literally called them the day before graduation. And I said, hey, what are you guys doing tomorrow? They're retired. They're not doing anything. So like, you need to meet me here. I'm graduating. And they were just absolutely shocked that I was able to not tell, because I used to tell my parents everything, but I just slipped it right by them. And they had no idea that I was working full time and going to school at night.
What was their what were their faces like when they turned up?
Proud, proud. It was one of those comments of, we knew you would always go back. We just didn't want to pressure you into going back. We knew you would go when you were ready to go. And so when I went back, I chose to major in communication because they had some courses in medical anthropology and health communication. And I really liked the professors who taught those classes. And so my undergraduate degree was in communication. Went on, got my master's, and that was in communication and leadership studies. And then I got my doctorate in doctorate of education with a focus on transformational leadership.
Wow. And did you do the master's and the doctorate sort of sequentially, like you did one after the other, or did you have gaps in between?
I had gaps. So when I graduated from my undergrad, I sold my house and moved to DC to attend Johns Hopkins University. They had a health communications program. Unfortunately, my mother had a stroke, and so I dropped everything and moved back to Seattle. Again, because I had worked in healthcare and I knew the doctors and the new the stroke center they had operated. I wanted to make sure that I was there to oversee her care. And so trying to transfer schools was problematic because at this point, online programs wasn't a thing. It was like, you have to be physically in this seat. And so I took a leave of absence from school for a year, and my mother just was not recovering as quickly as I wanted her to or had hoped she would. And so I ended up dropping out. And then, like 6 months later, Gonzaga University started their online program. So literally, I would just have to go to campus like 4 times a year. So that's what I did
Perfect. That's great. And you stayed in Seattle helping look after your mum at the same time.
until she passed away in 2019. Yes.
Mm, wow. It's interesting how our lives are built around a number of factors, aren't they? You know, we have our families, our personal lives, our work, our studies, our hopes and dreams, and it's all intermingled. You know, we're not just this singular person doing work. We are humans in life and all of its messiness, and work is a part of it. And I love that you shared all of that because it shows that this is what actually drives a lot of our decisions as well.
Absolutely. People have this grand idea, and maybe it's, when we're younger, we have this fantasy of what life is like. Oh, we're going to, marry the person of our dreams. We're going to have 2.5 children. We're going to have the house. We don't stop to think about, okay, well, who's going to vacuum? Who's going to take out the laundry? Who's going to go grocery shopping and put groceries away? All of these things, right? So I think we tend to glamorize things. And then once reality sets in, we're like, oh, life is. So there was an old, I think it was a Hoover vacuum commercial that said, life is messy, clean it up. And it is so true that life is messy. And especially with, they call us the sandwich generation. Gen X is considered the sandwich generation because, some of us do have families and, children, but then we also have our aging parents that we have to take care of. So that leaves very little time
Mm,
for ourselves.
mm. Yeah, totally agree. So the move towards teaching, well, you're studying communications, but the events that you spoke about earlier about being in teaching, and then you were asked to present to the executives, which kind of put you on this new track. Did they arrange those meetings for you? Was it part of the connection they had with these companies? And then you just got the lucky job of going and presenting to them?
Yeah, they were executives at the companies. Mhm. And so they're like, "We love what you had to say. Can you come and speak to our team?" And that's how I got started. One person actually gave me a contract. He was like, I'm resigning from this company. He's like, "But I want you to have this contract before I leave." And I've been working with that company for 4 years.
Yeah, wow. Wow. What was it at that around that time that you could feel inside of you that you wanted to create or bring to life? What was bubbling up for you?
For me, it was having the experience of having worked in corporate America, well, healthcare, and seeing how the young employees were kind of clueless. And I say that with all due respect. They had their degree, but they had no work experience, and so they didn't know how to interact. And so I felt it was my job to teach them how to interact with people from all walks of life and how that will bring so much value, not only to your career, but to your life. So, how do you do that in a very culturally intelligent, aware, intentional way without tokenizing anyone? And so that was kind of my call to action when I would go give these presentations. My very first presentation that I actually gave at the university that the executives heard was employing difference. So how do you employ people who don't look like you, act like you, think like you, and what a gift that is. And why I believe everyone should look at it as a gift. And so that was my presentation, and from that, they were like, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, we never thought about it that way. Can you come and speak to our leadership team?"
Mm. Are you teaching that today? Has that continued?
It's the thread through my work, yes.
I'd love to know now about the work that you do. And obviously, your mum said to you 5 days before her passing, it's time to start your business. Obviously, that must have just been a bit of a ding, a bit of a light bulb, like, okay, it's time. Thanks, mum. How did you know?
The whole thing surrounding my mom's passing was just so surreal because I believe that people know when they're going to pass, especially older people. And so she had told me, she, kind of gave me a warning, God wink, whatever you want to call it. About 3 months before she passed, she's like, "I'm not going to be here in 3 months." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're saying that to get under my skin. Like, what do you want? What do you want?" Like, I'm not going to take you shopping. You can tell me whatever you want. I'm still not going to take you shopping. And that was her way of kind of preparing me. And then, like I said, 5 days before she passed away, she was very serious. She said, It's your time. You took good care of me for 6 years after your dad passed away. Thank you for taking care of me. Now it is your time to go live your best life and start your business." And so that was everything that I do. I do it with her in mind.
If you're loving this conversation and want to dive deeper into purposeful work, then it's time to thank the 6-Star Leaders community for making this episode possible. The 6-Star Leaders are a group of purpose-driven business owners committed to doing business differently by embracing their unique genius and skills to make a real impact. It's a space for learning, growth, and truly becoming empowered in everything that you do. If you're ready to discover your own 6th star, go to bit.ly/6-star community-intro and book a chat to learn more. We look forward to seeing you. So you're in North Carolina. Who are the people that you are serving now?
My clients are still primarily on the West Coast. How I ended up in North Carolina, again, divine intervention. Thanks, Mom. So before my mother got sick, she kept saying she wanted to move back home, and home was Arkansas. And I said, "No, ma'am, we are not moving to anybody's Arkansas." And I said, okay, let's negotiate. Let's find a place that is close to Arkansas, but it is not Arkansas. And so she passed away, and I was in Dubai with some friends after she passed, and I kept saying, I need to go to North Carolina. I had never been to North Carolina. And my friend said, you realize you've said it 7 times, right? I'm like, okay. And she's like, okay, you said it 7 times. You need to go check out North Carolina. So literally, I got home on a Tuesday, went to Eventbrite to see if there were any conferences in North Carolina. It was sold out. I emailed the coordinator, asked if she can make room for one more person. And, Southern hospitality, sure, come on down. And so I did, fell in love with it. And then, a couple of years later, I moved here.
That's how it happens, right?
When it's divinely orchestrated, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you know that you were on path, or have you always kind of felt that you were? Was there a moment that you kind of went, yeah, I'm on path?
There are days where I don't think I'm on path. Most of the time I do. But then, you understand life, that some things will happen and you're like, maybe this is not the avenue I need to be going down. Maybe I need to go get off this on ramp and go do something else. But I know that I've been divinely orchestrated to be a teacher. Now, people always assume that when you say teacher, that means you're teaching, K-12 or you're teaching college. You teach every single day, right? So even if you're teaching someone a new recipe, it's still teaching. And so I firmly believe I've been divinely orchestrated to do that. And I do it in a way, um, it's the philosophy that I created when I was in my master's program, which is LEAD. And it's an acronym for love, enthusiasm, awareness, and development. And so when I teach, I do it in a non-romantic way of letting you know, I love you and I see the greatness in you. How can I help bring that out of you? And then I'm enthusiastic. Again, as I told my students, if I'm not having a good time, you're not going to have a good time because emotion contagion, right? So it's like when someone is down in the dumps, then you become down in the dumps as well. Or someone's like really excited, you become excited as well. So, you know, enthusiasm, emotional contagions, awareness, and that is emotionally aware, culturally aware, politically aware, all of those facets. And then how are you going to develop? People think that, especially us former professors, or professors in general, we feel like once we get some letters behind our name, that the growth ends. And I don't believe that's true at all. I'm usually awake at 3:30 in the morning and I'm reading, absorbing everything and cross-checking things and trying to figure out how puzzle pieces and Jenga is fitting together. That's what I do. I never stop learning. I believe that once you stop learning, you die. And my dad always said, even a fool can teach you something, even if it's how not to be a fool. So I've always wanted to continue learning and developing myself. And if I develop myself, I'm going to encourage others to develop themselves. So I've always had that.
Mm, mm. Do you have moments where you look at your previous colleagues, professors who are still doing the same thing? And do they, do you have a sense of kind of, are they stuck or are they in a bit of a bubble? Um, how do you feel about your life in comparison to where it could have been if you'd stayed?
Honestly, I would be miserable. Um, and that's not to put down any professors or any institutes of higher learning. But again, from my observation, I think that professors tend to get into this egotistical bubble of we've made it, we can't get fired now that we're tenured, and we don't have to do anything else. And it really does the students a disservice because professors aren't learning and growing. So therefore, they're using the same curriculum that they've used for the past 15, 20 years. I change my courses every single quarter. Even if I had 3 classes, the same 3 classes back to back, I never taught them the same way back to back. I adapted them based on the students that were in that particular class, right? So how you capture students in an 8 o'clock class is a lot different from how you capture the attention of students at a 2 o'clock class, right? It may take a little bit more um, coaching at 8 o'clock. Who wants to be up? Yes, you used to tell students all the time, you chose to register for this 8 o'clock class. Now you're complaining that it's too early. You did this to yourself. But I would do my best to pull them out of their morning time slumber and get them on board. And for the most part, it worked. There were some students who were just like, "Yeah, 8 o'clock is just not my jam. Next time, don't register for 8 o'clock class." I get that. Um, but again, it's me being able to adapt my courses, being able to connect with my students, many of whom I'm still in contact with. I still get WhatsApps and LinkedIn messages and DMs and all of these things from students I have not had in, oh, 5 or 6 years. Yeah, it's really lovely that they will read something or watch something and said, "This made me think of you. How are you doing? We hope you're well," so on and so forth. So that is the joy that keeps me going.
Mm, that's beautiful. Sounds like you're always evolving.
I try. I try. Like I said, if you don't grow, I think you die. Um, Even if it's not a physical death, it's a slow, I think, losing your mind, not having that joy, that development. I think that's a worse death than actually a physical death. So I always try to learn something.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. What is it that you're focusing on at the moment in terms of what you want to teach or bring about in the world?
So my work is primarily centered on we-centric workplaces. I just released a book on cultural intelligence. It's called Cultural Intelligence, a Blueprint for 21st Century Leadership. And it's really about how do you connect with your staff. I had the privilege of speaking to the county commissioners last week, and I explained to them that with all of these political um, barriers, challenges that are we're facing right here in America, it's not going to work for the simple fact that it's needed, right? And my job is to convince leaders to explain to them why it's needed and why it will always be needed. And so I framed it this way: Gen X, we're going to be retiring the next 7 to 10 years. The younger generation, they're becoming influencers and starting their own businesses. They're becoming entrepreneurs. So therefore, you're not going to have a employee pipeline. So if you don't have employees, you don't have a company. So that's why it just makes sense to have a we-centric workplace that you're willing to not necessarily change your entire corporate value system, but there's some give and take. And the idea of it's our way or the highway does not work anymore because younger generations know how to build their own highway. So then what are you going to do when you're stranded on this highway that you let so many people abandon, that you encourage them to abandon? So once I frame it that way and they realize that it just makes financial sense to get on board and create a we-centric workplace and try to retain their staff, try to promote their staff, try to develop internal leaders, then they get on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
And plus it's up for me, it's about love, legacy, and leadership. At the end of the day, we all want to look back on our life and think about what a wonderful impact we've had on people. Not think about, oh, well, I laid thousands of people off and I was okay with that. To me, that's not a joyful way of exiting this world. And so, I really encourage leaders, think about your legacy. What are you going to tell your grandchildren, your great grandchildren? What do you want to be written in your obituary? Are you going to be proud of what's said about you? So I think once you start philosophic, making things more philosophical, they tend to react.
Yeah, don't they? Um, is there a particular passion that you have or something that you internally you really want to impact or see the change in? Is there something going on in, for you that you would maybe it's the next couple of years, maybe it's longer term. Is there something that you really would love to see happen or shift?
To be honest, right now, my number one goal is for people to realize that their words and actions are often misaligned and they can easily be considered to be hypocrite. And I've noticed that people are more offended when you use the H word, hypocrite, more than any other word. And so it's like, okay, you're saying this, but your actions are this. Can you see how they're misaligned? And so I want people to really think about alignment and being intentional and truly leaving the world better than what they found it instead of regressing to how things were. Because if things were so great as they were, we wouldn't have changed to begin with. There wouldn't have been a need for change. And so I just really want people to start thinking critically, which is it seems to me that people don't like to do that much these days. They tend to get their information on 20-second video reels and they don't fact check. They don't verify the information, which is it drives me bonkers to be honest with you. One thing when I was teaching is like I always encourage my students to fact check me. And if I was incorrect, let me know because things change on a dime. There's information all the time. And honestly, I would say some things just to be incorrect to see if they would check me. And, a lot of times they would like, first week of school, they would be intimidated. And I would say, I just gave you a line of crock, which was intentional. Now I need you all to start checking me. And so they would. They was like, Dr. Harden, we respectfully disagree with what you just said, and here's why. So if you can logically explain why you think I'm wrong, we will respectfully agree to disagree. There's not going to be any argument or any debate or anything like that. Evidence is evidence. Conviction is conviction. As long as you can articulate that, I'm okay with that.
I love what you're saying here because I see it all around me as well. And having teenage kids as well, you the influences they have, the way they get their information, what they believe in. As a parent, I'm always uh, just piping in instead of telling them no, that's wrong or whatever. I ask them a question because I want them to think. I want them to answer questions, to go back and search some more. And from what you're saying and the journey that you've been on and what you're passionate about, what you're doing, I'm wondering who is the ideal person to read your book and to, experience the work that you do? Is it a corporate executive or is it the younger generation who are coming through, or is it both?
It's actually both. So how the book came into existence was I was invited to speak at a university about cultural intelligence. They knew my awards, I guess, from all the teaching accolades that I had received, and they said, "Okay, well, you're fantastic. Come and speak about this." And so I told them about my journey of teaching and how I always solicited my students' feedback, because I used to tell my students, "I don't work for the university. I work for you, and my job is to give you what you need, not necessarily what you want, but what you need." And so, I was always intentional where if we had international students, I would ask them what name they prefer that I use, whether it's their Chinese name or their American name, or, make sure that the pronunciation was correct. All of those things to let the students know that I see you, I value you. And that's how the entire book came to existence. I gave this presentation. I came home, I called a friend to, let him know how it went. And he goes, well, Kimberly, that's an entire book. I'm like, I guess it is. So I gave the presentation in October, started writing the book in December. And it took an entire year, actually over a year, but that's how the book came into being. So what started out to be a conversation with educators, I realized that executives needed this as well. And then, the younger generation who are just entering the workplace, or if they're becoming entrepreneurs, they're going to be managers and directors at some point, CEOs with their own staff. How are you going to navigate these challenges with your team?
Mm, that sounds brilliant. Really, really interesting. We'll obviously have the link to the book in the show notes below so people can check that out. What's been one of the hardest things that you've had to navigate on this journey? You've obviously talked about your mum, so that would be the hardest. And but in terms of getting to where you are today, has there been something, a real challenge that you've had to overcome?
I would say losing my parents and my brother was the most difficult challenge, um, especially during the holidays because, my mother, my brother, my passed away, my mom's birthday, and then my dad loved the holidays, and then January is when my mom passed away, my dad's birthday. So it's like between November and January is really a struggle for me emotionally. Um, but you just get up and do the best that you can. I try to give myself grace. Um, some days I'm like I'm not getting out of bed today, and that's okay. Um, and then there's some days like I'm gonna go conquer the universe. That's okay too. But you just have to give yourself some grace during that time. People, I think, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, they really don't think about self care. Everyone is go, 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 get the money, get the money, get the money. And for me, money is great. It's a means to an end, but it's not everything. And so I think that is the challenge of knowing when to set boundaries and say, no, I'm not going to accept this contract, or no, not going to accept this speaking engagement, because you have to take care of yourself. Once you start losing your health, that's it's hard to recover from that. Whether it's your mental health or your physical health, it's really really hard to bounce back. And as I shared, I have my lavender chamomile tea, so I am trying to be intentional of creating a process of decompression and not just, run myself into the ground. So, having this tea every night is part of my self-care.
That's lovely. So important, what you just said, and thank you for sharing and opening up. And we all have stuff. We've all got these things because we're human. This is part of the human experience, and embracing all of those aspects of our lives is really important.
Absolutely, and I think social media does a huge disservice because, we see these people that we believe are invincible, not realizing that half of the things that are posted are is fake, right? It's like, "Oh, this person, they're getting on a private plane and this, that, and the other." No, they're not. They rented a hangar. That's what they're doing. They rented their clothes from Stitch Fit. They got their makeup done. They're renting this hangar for an hour to take photos. This is not real. This is all smoke and mirrors. And, we get into this mindset of this person is successful, I'm not successful, comparison is the thief of joy. And I know quite a few, um, small business owners who just threw in the towel because they felt like they weren't successful compared to the next person. And so I don't, and people tease me or chastise me, however you want to view it, because I don't go down that rabbit hole of let me see what this person is doing and let me see what this person's doing. Whatever you're doing, God bless you. Continue doing it. Much love and much success to you. But I'm not going to compare myself to what another person is doing because that's their path. That's not my path. And I think, again, I think social media does a huge disservice. And I think we need to just do what we're designed to do and not try to do 15 things because you see someone else doing 15 things, or you see 15 people doing one thing and you want to, encompass all of that. So I think my strength is if you look back at my career, everything has centered around teaching. So yes, I may be consulting, I may be speaking, but it still goes right back to teaching. A lot of people don't do that. They want to do this, and I'm an AI specialist. I'm a technology specialist. I'm a speaker. I'm a this and I'm a that. I do. You're doing 15 things. Like, when do you sleep? So yeah, I try not to go down that rabbit hole. I just try to and have a peaceful life, do the best that I can do, and keep it moving.
You're doing it really well. And what you were saying then about social media, I completely agree. I also think and see from my observation that people that are addicted to watching what other people do and get caught up in those kind of treadmills of comparison and the analysis and trying to be all those different things, it actually takes them away from who they truly are.
And what they could be doing. You say you want to have an impact, but yet you just spent 2 hours looking at people's, social media. Why? You could have spent 2 hours doing something more productive.
Exactly. Exactly. So, what would you say to other people who are potential? Maybe they've been on that treadmill and they've kind of got to a point where they're like, this isn't working. I've tried 15 different things. And yes, they're watching the social media, but they know that they want to do something that's more meaningful and impactful. What would you say to them?
I would ask, what would you do if there were no social media? Would you continue the work that you're doing if there was no social media, that you cannot make a video or reel, post about it? If you just had to go out and do the work, would you still go do the work? And if they say yes, okay, then disconnect and go do the work. And if the answer is no, then this is not the right career path for you, right? There's a quote, and I don't remember who said it, but do the work that even if it doesn't pay you. I think you know the quote that I'm talking about. What are you going to do that if I would still do this work even if it doesn't pay me? I do a lot of pro bono work just because this gives me joy and I know that I'm having an impact. I may not know for years, decades, if I'm having an impact, but people usually loop back around sometimes years later and they say, yeah, you gave this presentation in Las Vegas on such and such date at such and such organization. And I just want to tell you what an impact it had. Those are so wonderful because there are days where you're like, why am I doing this? And then you look back and you're like, oh, I did have an impact, right? It's like when you're in primary school and you have that one teacher that your favorite teacher who always believed in you, that you just adored. It's the same thing. Not that I need to be adored, but just knowing that you have impact even if you don't realize you have impact.
Yeah, so true. What would you say your superpower is?
So it reminds me of an assignment that I used to give my students for their first speech. And the assignment was, choose something in your house that represents your essence. And so they would always ask me what item represents me. And the item that represents me is a silicone spatula. So I think my superpower is that I'm tough and I can withstand a lot of heat. And for anyone to say that entrepreneurship is easy, that is totally incorrect. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of false expectations that people put on you, things like that. But you have to roll with it with grace. And so I think that is my superpower is just being, Teflon or silicone, I should say, not Teflon, silicone.
What color is the spatula?
I have this container that's an array of of silicone spatulas, right? The silicone spoons, the wooden spoons, all the things, the slide up ones, all different kinds of colors. And my friends, that's what they actually send me for holidays now. Like, they don't bother with anything else. And so when I get a package, I'm like, okay, I know there's going to be some kind of kitchen utensil in this package or a mug. I have an unhealthy obsession with mugs. And I am odd in the sense that I don't like to have my tea in a coffee mug, and I don't like to have vice versa. Like, I have to have certain cups
Mm-hmm.
for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
they know that.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Oh, it's good. What does the future look like for you? Have you got a vision for the next couple of years, or in terms of the impact you're making or the change that you want to see?
Well, I used to joke and say I wanted to retire by a certain age, but that's not gonna happen. The time is here, but it's not gonna happen. And then, I remember what my parents used to say, that you'll never retire because you love what you do. So even if you're not getting paid for it, you're still gonna do it in some capacity. So it's just continue writing, continue speaking. Um, I'm already working on my third book. And so my friends are like, "You literally just released your second book 2 weeks ago and you're already drafting the outline for your third one?" Yes, I am. So just a lot more writing, um, more speaking, more consulting, but primarily speaking and
Mhm,
writing.
mhm.
I have a team that, I can train to go out and do the heavy lifting of consulting, but I really do enjoy speaking and the writing.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful. Um, wow, look at the time. Dr. Kimberly, how can people get in contact with you if they want you to come and speak, or they just want to talk, learn more? What can tell me? Tell
Yes,
us.
they can go to my website, hardenconsultinggroup.com, and there is a schedule button that they can click and get a complimentary 15-minute session to discuss their needs.
Lovely. Lovely. Yep. And we'll have the link to that below in the show notes, along with the book. So you've got 2 books already now, and you're working on the third. Okay. Wonderful. But definitely go and check out those books, and they will be as delightful as you speak. I'm sure. I'm excited. I love everything you've talked about, and the journey has been fascinating, Kimberly, and the way that you have brought together these your passions and strengths, and helping people to communicate and be more intentional and aware with their interactions and how they create these, and now the we workspaces. It's beautiful. It's so needed. And yeah, congratulations to you for everything that you've achieved, and the path that you're weaving in the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm. As we come to a close, I always like to invite my guests to leave the listeners with just a little tidbit or something, piece of wisdom, perhaps.
Oh, piece of wisdom. Really about having a growth mindset. Especially those of us that are of a certain age or maybe a certain position in life, whether it's a professional title or what have you, we tend to think that, I know everything. And that is so not true. And I want people to really think about that the world changes so rapidly, and you have to be able to pivot with it or get left behind. So you either pivot or you're going to lose your team, you're going to lose your colleagues, you may even lose family members. So it's really important to be open-minded, to be kind, have compassion, and really cultivate a growth mindset instead of a fixed one.
Mm. Couldn't agree more. What beautiful words to finish up on. Thank you. Thanks for coming and sharing your wisdom and joy and your story with me today.
My
Kimberly,
pleasure.
it's been really lovely.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Mission Activated. If today's conversation resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Remember, your mission matters. When you live on purpose, not only do you transform your own life, but you inspire others to do the same. Until next time, stay aligned, keep activated. I'll see you then.